Well, we talked a little bit about a little about the companies that we get to work with, and I have a really personal story here about some people on this next panel. Just 3 years ago, so late February 2020, I was heading up to Santa Barbara to host my first founders dinner in Santa Barbara. I think a lot of you know I love to host small dinners, and this was my first time popping into Santa Barbara, and I happened to meet that night the CEO of EVmatch, Heather Hochrein. And it was great to have her there and meet her, and literally within the week, boom, COVID happened, and there went all plans to kind of ever come back to Santa Barbara that year, even though I, in my head, said I'm gonna be there every few months. And may have lost touch with a lot of people that night, but Heather reached out and said, hey, really enjoyed the conversation we had, would love to talk further, maybe, interested in investing, and I had no background in EV. I still don't. I had no way of really knowing how to assess this. And I started looking inward and say, all right, founders, amazing, but I gotta have the right people to tell me that this is a thumbs up deal. And so thinking through, pretty much the first person that came to mind, anything related to utilities, was Kelly Sarber. So it was an immediate text and call, hey, you gotta meet Heather. Which she did. She jumped in on, and you brought a friend who was like the EV guru in her own regard as well. Jumped on the diligence, met the team, we invested, and Kelly continued on and continues on helping EVmatch, but got letters written from mayors to help win a massive grant, beating out like a public company. So that's just one story of one company that we've been fortunate to work with, and so with that, I am thrilled to bring up Ms. Kelly Sarber to help lead us in this great first panel. Thank you. Can you help up?
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to ask my panelists to come up right now, so it's not going to be like, let's make a deal and bring you down from the audience. While they're coming up, my name's Kelly Sarber. I'm actually a native from San Diego. My kid went to school with Rob Machado's kids. I've lived in Cardiff for many, many years, was a surfer, surfed competitively in our sports teams, not professionally. And so this is very close to my heart where we are here today. One of my favorite breaks is just south of here at Grandview. So anyway, I want to welcome my panel. And we're so lucky today to have everybody here. Thank you so much for coming. This is going to be somewhat informal. And so the way I thought that we would structure this is to give each company about 5 minutes or so to give us sort of an update on where they are, a little bit of an elevator pitch, and talk a little bit about sort of where they're at right now in their fundraising, because I think most are out getting money. And so we talk a little bit about that. We can kind of focus in a little bit more on sort of strategies around that fundraising. Is it, are you going after strategics, family funds? What is kind of your goal? And then sort of, I think, would like to end with, from a year from now, where they would like to be, so that we can all visualize and help them to realize those kinds of particular intentions or dreams. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself. I was in the garbage and sludge business for almost 20 years. And as a developer, I developed landfills, recycling facilities, composting, biosolid pelletizers. I was very, very embedded into the waste business, wastewater, and waste energy. And in 2008, during the last stimulus, I decided to pivot to renewables because my skill set was needed in that space. And so then subsequently, right now, we're constructing what's the largest solar PV project in the United States on 18,000 acres. I developed that in Western Arizona. We have 2 gigawatts of storage also coming in on that project, as well as a hydrogen hub, which we can talk about with the fleets. And then I also work in New York City quite a lot. New York City's going through a massive transition. They're basically transitioning almost 18,000 megawatts, their peak, into offshore wind and hydro and solar coming in from up north. And that's been an incredible challenge for that city. So I'm out there because I lived there for a long time, and now I'm helping them sort of realize that particular transition. And I think, so Heather is I'm an advisor and early investor in her business. I've got a couple other portfolio companies here. I was on the board of Tech Coast Angels, now new fund with the Shook. So I'm active as an angel also. I try to stay out of clean tech, but for some reason I always have to manage clean tech deals, and then I end up investing in them because I love the people so much. So I'm looking at this from a higher profile vision. My projects are typically, the project in Arizona, that's a $5 billion capital investment opportunity. So we really play more on a private equity side, if you want to call it that, as well as on the tax equity in terms of financing through the IRA. And with these guys, all of these companies that are here today are solving a problem. And at the heart of everything that we do, you have to understand what that problem is, and you have to understand what that solution is, and you need to have an ability to articulate that, differentiate yourself, and then convince people that you're on a path, which all of these folks do. I mean, if you look at their incredible background and profiles, these are niche opportunities in the clean tech space that you don't see every day. And it's difficult, I think, for family funds and smaller angel investors. And when I say that, I mean, folks that aren't doing $100 million deals like kind of the gang that I run with, but folks that are looking more in the $5, $10, $15, $20 million space to really be able to ride up that value chain as they grow these companies. So with that, Heather, I'm going to kick it off to you. EVmatch. Fascinating company, continues to evolve, really take advantage of where she's at in the EV mobility space. So go ahead, Heather.
Thanks, Kelly. Well, hello, everyone. My name's Heather Hochrein. I'm the founder and CEO at EVmatch. And Neil, thank you for that kind introduction. I'm so glad we met in Santa Barbara at the Lark many years ago, right before COVID hit. And Kelly, as you know, has been an advisor and investor to EVmatch for several years, and it's been so fun working with you. So for those of you who don't know, EVmatch is a shared EV charging network. We focus on reservation-based shared level 2 charging. So really the problem that we're addressing is lack of charging availability for folks who don't live in a single family home. And that's a massively growing problem as we have electrification of light duty transportation over the next 10 years really coming to the mainstream. And historically, EV adoption has been really prominent for those who have access to home charging, but more difficult for those who are living in apartments, condos, shared housing. So at EVmatch, we have a reservation-based software platform that allows drivers to reserve and pay for charging on the go. And what we're doing is really coupling the collaborative economy with this growing need for charging. So we have apartments, commercial spaces, even individual homes listing their charging stations on our platform and renting those out to drivers on a reservation basis. So you can think of us sort of as an Airbnb for EV charging. That's how we launched in 2017, and we've been evolving ever since then to layer on some additional grid capabilities to our services. So this year, we are bringing to market a new hardware technology, which has been developed by Argonne National Lab and funded by the Department of Energy. We have a 10-year exclusive license to a technology that allows us to retrofit any level 2 charging station. Level 2 is 240 volt, typically 40 amps, and make it smart. So what's so exciting about this new technology is that we can retrofit any non-network device or dumb charger, make it smart, and bring that into the digital ecosystem, regardless of make or model of the charging equipment. So that allows us to then layer our digital platform onto any type of hardware and have really sophisticated controls and monitoring for the electric utilities, which I think is why Kelly got initially interested in EVmatch, is because of the massive energy management opportunities with EV charging and really the intersection of decarbonization of the energy sector and the transportation sector happening at the same time. So with this new piece of hardware we're bringing to market, we are going to have a lot of integration opportunities with grid aggregators. We're going to be able to go after managed charging program opportunities with utilities, and it's really unlocking a whole nother level of service for EVmatch. So with that, we are actively fundraising. We are raising our Series A, and we are just getting started, planning to close end of the summer. We are actively seeking a lead investor and really focused on a strategic. As Kelly mentioned, there's a lot of opportunity for strategic investments in this space. But we do see a nice blend of capital where we are seeking a lead as a strategic investor, but also financial investors in that round to have a nice blended portfolio of investors. So happy to connect with folks after. and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Heather. Troy and I had an opportunity to chat the other day. Very, very impressive history. All three panelists are incredible people in terms of what you guys have accomplished, and also serial entrepreneurs, all of you. And so it's really great to have them here talking. You guys are really lucky to hear from them, their personal experience. I think Troy is really zeroed in on probably one of the most problematic industries or segments of the clean tech world, which is transmission. I managed 114-mile transmission line between Arizona and California. It took us almost 6 years to permit. People don't like very large electrical lines coming through their neighborhoods, and yet that is going to be the backbone of our national grid. And if you ask anybody in the space in Washington, D.C., as far as what are some of the obstacles and challenges, it's really bringing this power in from outside areas and making our grid more resilient. And Troy has come up with an amazing idea that would really revolutionize how we develop transmission. So Troy, I'm going to let you kick it off and talk more about it. I'm not going to be able to tell everybody what an incredible company you've created here. So go ahead.
Thank you, Kelly. Hi, everybody. So a little bit about me. I've been in clean energy most of my life. In 1980, my dad built his dream home, and it was my chore growing up to maintain our solar hot water heating system. So 42 years in solar, if you can count that. But I started the first wind farm company in Kansas, Trade Wind Energy. It became a Deca unicorn. It's now a $35 billion part of NL Clean Power. Then I started Pristine Sun, and we built a bunch of solar projects. But transmission and putting things underground is the biggest impediment to the growth of renewable energy. There's an amazing number of projects out there that just can't get their power to our cities. And so transmission lines, yeah, they take 10 to 20 years to get built in this country. Why? Because of NIMBYs and bananas. Probably heard of NIMBYs, right? Not in my backyard. Anybody know what bananas are? Build absolutely nothing, anywhere, nowhere, anytime. Who has one of those in their neighborhood? I got one in my neighborhood. Anyway, so I'll tell the quick story, but the origin story of the company, we had a solar farm. We had to downsize it 75%, again, because the grid couldn't handle it. And so we were drowning our tears over beers at a happy hour, and one of our solar engineers is a former Navy SEAL. And he's bragging to his girlfriend about how he used a plasma cutting torch underwater to cut through the side of enemy ships, or to practice doing that, to take over the ship. You know, water rushes in, plate falls in, pow, pow, pow. Dude, you're a badass. Anyway, so middle of the night, I wake up. I'm like, 20,000 degrees, plasma. That could go through rock, right? Yeah, it could. It could vaporize it. Surely somebody's doing this. Nobody's doing it. So I just couldn't stop thinking about it. Finally hired an engineering firm to do a feasibility study. They said, yes, it'll work. 2, no one is doing this other than in the 1970s, Los Alamos National Lab did it. They closed the program down with the new administration. And number 3, we can bore at 1 kilometer per day. That's crazy fast. And number 4, they gave me the estimated OpEx. And I was running the math on it because I've built hundreds of tunnels and trenches to put stuff underground, and it's like, wow, we got a business here. So funded it myself initially 7 years ago, and we raised a pre-seed round last summer. It was way oversubscribed. Interlock put in just under $300,000, so thank you for all who participated in that. We raised $7 million in our pre-seed, and that helped us build our first commercial machine. We've had prototypes for many years. And now we're making money, generating revenue. We're working with PG&E to bury power lines and stop killing people in California, causing all these fires. Yay. And now we're actively raising a $15 million seed round, and it's about halfway subscribed at the moment. And then a couple of traction things real quick. I know I got to be fast. We've got an SBIR grant over 3 phases, should be $1.25 million with the government. We landed a binding MOU with a sovereign wealth fund for, sounds crazy, $27 billion of capital. The first, when it closes, we'll get $10 million to start developing 24,000 kilometers, 15,000 miles of underground transmission, fiber, and water lines coast to coast here in the US. Mostly California and Texas, but about 22 states. We're a utility in 28 states. So that gives us rights to put our tunnels and trenches under any public roadway. So super excited about building new infrastructure in the US. So again, thanks for those of you who helped out. So.
All right, so we're hearing a common theme here. We have pain points in our industry. Heather's company is addressing the importance of connecting people with EV cars to charging infrastructure to get over range anxiety, which is a big inhibitor. And she's also coming up with a way to make dumb smart chargers smart. And I'm sorry, dumb chargers smart. And that gives us big ability to start moving power around in a demand response. I mean, we're talking about almost 1 million chargers in California that are dumb. And if you place those and own that power, that lets you move a lot of power around and actually arbitrage and sell that into the market. And then we've got Troy, who has looked at a pain point of transmission, the development of transmission and how long that's taking and how it's not syncing up to renewables. Very, very much a pain point right now, and a lot of focus and emphasis on transmission and making that process work better. And then now we've got, I'm very pleased to introduce Jack Kennedy. Nice to meet you, Jack.
Nice to meet you.
And an incredible company, transportation logistics with fleet management, another sort of pain point right now. You have an antiquated, in the past, I ran 600 trucks. And at one time, I never knew where anybody was. I didn't know if they had a flat tire. I never knew. It was not an efficiently managed system. And now Jack is coming in and really doing a lot in that business because there's so much opportunity now with not only efficiencies with trucks, but also in terms of managing, keeping drivers. That's become very important. So Jack, with that, why don't you tell us a little bit about your company and where you're at in your journey?
Sure, thanks for having me. And awesome story so far. That's sort of Death Ray cartoon character amazing stuff right there. I want to learn more about that. The company's platform science, and really simply, we talk about mobility. In vehicles, particularly large commercial vehicles, 5 years ago, there was no way to address the problem. Right here in town, Qualcomm, where I was briefly, was kind of the pioneer with Omnitrax, which was the first real scaled telematics company, tracking trucks with some limited information. Around 2015, my co-founder approached me. I had already left Qualcomm, and he was interested in developing applications for vehicles. Basic question. Because I want to develop applications for vehicles. I do it for all kinds of commercial companies. You know about it. How do I do it? And I said, you can't. What do you mean? I can do lots of things. Here's my amazing resume. Look at all the stuff we built. I said, no, you can't develop apps for vehicles the way you develop them for phones. And we kind of looked at each other and said, that's a pretty cool idea. So in 2015, we started. Today, we are Daimler, PACCAR, which is Kenworth and Peterbilt and DAF. We're Navistar and a few others soon to be announced. We are the platform on vehicles, so you or anybody can develop an application that serves a purpose related to a vehicle, whether it's a driver-facing, vehicle-facing, or infrastructure-facing purpose or back office. You can write whatever applications you want. We were able to build an installed base we were first sort of a disruptor. We had an Android-based app ecosystem that supplanted the legacy players, which were very vertical. You had to know everything about a truck and cabling and all these things to get into the business of developing software. Very, very hard. We eliminated that, and we serve the biggest fleets, Walmart. If you're familiar with that industry, I know at least one of you are. We serve the biggest fleets, and because we were able to do that first, we were able to attract application developers to our platform. The tools we use to deploy our apps are exactly the same SDKs and deployment tools that everybody gets to use. So we commercialized in late 2019. We're approaching $100 million this year. Our investors are, again, Daimler, PACCAR, 8BC, Prologis, which would be very interested in talking to you. Prologis is the largest warehouse operator in the world. They're also the fifth largest solar power provider. So they've gone from warehouses to providing electricity for trucks. And the whole industry is basically trying to figure out, we're in a very exciting phase right now where people have figured out, partly because of COVID, partly because of mobility, that there are huge problems and they can be solved. So that's where we sit. We do it ourselves and we enable others to do the same.
Excellent. All right, so I'm going to start back with you, Jack, I'm going to let you go first. So right now on your fundraising journey, are you out raising money for any particular reason?
We had a first closing of our C1, which was a way to let a strategic in this case, PACCAR. Okay. Daimler was already in and they wanted to also be involved. And because of that, the round is open. So we're very pleased where we are, but our investors have largely been strategic. We always say our cap table comes to work every day. Prologis certainly does. Every one of our customers on the user side drives through their gate every day. On the OEM side, we are a service to them as well, making them now a recurring service business by offering applications on their vehicles as well.
So if you were going to describe what you think is your greatest advantage in approaching strategics, what would you say that is? Like, how do you make the initial contact to them?
Wow, we started interesting. Strategics, let's start with the OEMs, the vehicle manufacturers. Every single one of them has tried to do this themselves. But every single one of them found out that nobody buys a fleet with their enterprise software all at once day one. So we've been selling this story in the market to them since 2015. But by 2019, late 2019, enough of them had finally had too much pain, too much cost, too much failure, and realized that there needed to be a joint approach to it. Some of that's become, in the charging business, some of them are partnering that way. They realize you can't change a whole industry by yourself. So that they're ready to hear that, and having leadership by Daimler and now Navistar and PACCAR has made that, the ball really is rolling downhill.
I think that's something that we can all kind of take a look at in terms of our own portfolio strategies and who we align ourselves with and what kind of money we're attracting. When you have, for infrastructure funds in particular with the private equity guys I deal with, their return profiles are a little bit different. They're actually lower than most PEs are, and they also are more patient. So from a standpoint of how you define your company, sometimes by just your sheer definition will attract a different type of investor.
And to that point, every one of those investors had a bigger problem than we did.
Yeah.
Right? So we were showing up as cost takeout before we were even upside for them. They were all trying it, spending enormous amounts of money. And these large companies, they often don't know what they're actually spending because there's a little bit here, a little bit there, and then next thing you know, it's 9, 10 figures. So that's step one. But nobody is ready to fund on that idea. They have to learn and feel it first.
Right.
Once they do, the second thing is, if you have an industry with concentrated customers, strategics hearing from those customers can be, much quicker to move.
Right, and I think that's a theme that you all will hear from all three panelists is how successful they've been at attracting strategics that are really interested in their company. So Troy, can you talk to us a little bit about your journey, what kind of investor you like what's your sweet spot in terms of who you would like to attract as a partner investor?
Yeah, this may be a little bit surprising. I'm trying to democratize the ownership of infrastructure. So I've been an angel investor myself for like 30 years, have a family office, and I put a bunch of my own money, our family office money, into the company. We bootstrapped it, $13 million since 2016 to de-risk the tech, so it's complicated tech. Imagine a little tractor with 10 lightsabers on the front, vaporizing, melting everything, and a Mandalorian jetpack blowing it all out the back. My teenage son helped me with that. Anyway, so we started with angels, smaller funds like Interlock, and we raised $7 million in our pre-seed, as I think I mentioned, and we're mostly angels and small funds. We even have a crowdfunding campaign on Net Capital that is just blowing up, so that's kind of fun. So in addition to that, though, I do think it's important to bring in some larger funds. So we are talking to a number of them that are looking, but I don't want to. I'm not motivated by money. I don't need an exit. So I don't want a big company, a private equity or VC to come in and change what we're trying to do. I don't want to go start helping the oil and gas industry or start doing transportation right out of the gate. I really want to fix this clean energy problem. I mean, I wrote the book, The Clean Power Revolution, almost 20 years ago. I've been speaking on this for pretty much my whole career. So anyway, a lot of smaller investors and build an army of cheerleaders and supporters in all the states that we're going to be operating in.
So alignment and intention in terms of who your investors are,
yeah.
Which I think is great. I think you hope that you're going to get that even with VCs and folks that maybe aren't as patient, but you're hoping that their mission is similar to yours and that they're going to be patient with your evolution, because there certainly is one with these startups. So Heather and I had a conversation with Schneider Ventures yesterday. Schneider's a perfect example of a company who, if you know what they're looking for, and you package your business like in a way that they understand, they get it and they get excited. So why don't you talk a little bit about your evolution towards who you've been able to attract, some of the incredible partnerships that Heather's been able to develop. And when you're a young female founder and you're competing against a lot of very well-heeled EV companies in the space, you really need a lot of friends to boost your profile, and she's done this, in spades. So go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I think early on, we definitely, even as a very small company, 3 employees, started attracting attention from large corporates. And that was really interesting to me because we were solving a problem that many of them, understood was a massively growing problem, and they perhaps didn't have the capabilities or the in-house resources to really dedicate to that problem. The problem of addressing limited charging for renters and apartment dwellers. And utilities identify with this problem, cities see it, government agencies like the California Energy Commission. And now I think even with COVID, where more people are spending time at home, less people were at work where they had charging previously, that really kind of accelerated the understanding of the problem. So early on, we integrated our software with a handful of companies, NLX, one of them, so I hear the NL group, and that really led, actually we integrated with a company that got acquired by the NL group, and so that sort of led to the next opportunity. We are also integrated with Wallbox, a company based in Spain, and we've really identified pretty well with the European EV charging manufacturers because they tend to have open standards. And so with our platform that's really democratizing access to EV charging, that aligns nicely with open software standards. So I would say those have led to really interesting opportunities with other EVSE manufacturers. Siemens is one we're working with, and a handful of other companies. And then that sort of led to this idea of, well, what do we need to do to bring this technology, the software technology, to more hardware opportunities? What kind of integrations do we need to further develop? And that led me to really follow this technology at Argonne National Lab that they've been working on since 2016, and go out and meet the inventor and basically understand when this technology was going to be ready for commercialization. And so I've been tracking that and was able to acquire that license, that exclusive license last year that we'll be bringing to market. And I think that positions the company really well with some of these other EV charging manufacturers who see that there's a gap in the market. They see that the smart level 2 charger isn't going to solve everything, especially if there's a requirement that technologies use 1 or 2 types of hardware. So our hardware is really an enabling function that companies will tap into. So that said, we are actively seeking strategics in this round in our Series A in kind of 2 categories. One is the investor-owned utilities have funds, so many of those have VC arms, and because what we're doing has such major implications for the utilities, there's a lot of alignment there, especially with our new hardware technology. And then 2 is the OEMs, the vehicle manufacturers, who see that they are gonna have limited adoption of their vehicles if they don't solve this problem of renters having charging. And in many places like California, you have 35–40% of the population living in shared multifamily housing. And so until we address that problem, there's going to be a limitation on who will adopt these electric cars. So we think that there's a really nice opportunity to have a strategic leading our raise, our Series A raise, but then also couple that with financial investors. One thing I'm a little hesitant to do is to have 100% strategic capital in this raise, because those come with commercial agreements, right? There's got to be some commercial opportunity for that strategic to want to invest. And so we want to be careful we don't lock ourselves into one vehicle make, one EVSE company, one utility, and then drive the product development too much based on their needs.
That's a good point. So I think one of the interesting thing about Heather's company and how it's evolved is that, it was first a software play in terms of an Airbnb for the EV charging network. And then there was this, again, another problem or a pain point, which is that we have all of these dumb chargers and people are charging their cars at the wrong time. They don't have any kind of way to control the way they're charging the cars. And more importantly, there's no way for there to be replicable communication back to the grid. So for example, saying, don't charge now, we would like to have access to that power. And when you start to aggregate that, 1 million chargers, you're talking about a lot of power that you can, instead of having to build maybe new renewable energy assets within that generating area, you could actually use demand response as a way to meet that peak demand. So that is an interesting thing from an infrastructure standpoint, because what it means is that you have a constant demand for capital in terms of acquiring these products, placing them, owning that, so then you own the power. So from an infrastructure standpoint, the ability to have a way to continue to deploy capital through the lifetime expectation of the business is attractive versus just it being a software company. Just a comment that I'll make because I'm in the heavy infrastructure side of things. Okay, so I promised that we would all put our energy together and vibrate at a level that helps all three of these founders get to where they want to go in a year. So I'd like to know, like, if you could push yourself out a year, how would you be spending your time? You know, what would your sort of day look like? And, you know, would you be able to focus more on the company, more on fundraising? Where would you like to be? And we'll put all of our energy behind that. So go ahead, Heather.
I'm first. All right. Well, we will have doubled our team size, which will be fantastic. I do expect that I will be spending more of my time with strategic partnership development and less on day-to-day operating the company. You know, our goal is to have over 20,000 EV drivers, over 3,000 site hosts next year, and we will have this product fully commercialized. So right now we are in the process of selecting our contract manufacturer. We are doing all of the tooling. So we're really in a commercialization phase with a hardware product. So next year, you know, excited about having up to 10,000 units produced from a US contract manufacturer and deploying those units largely through utility programs. And the utility is the buyer. And then we have end users who are either single family or multifamily residents using our hardware product. So very excited about that and really excited about, you know, the opportunities from the Inflation Reduction Act to continue to accelerate our business next year and frankly in the next 10 years.
And we don't have a lot of time, so I wanted to be very, you know, focused on what we talked about. But for those who don't know, the Inflation Reduction Act poured almost $400 billion into the climate change space. So there is a lot of other people's money available to us if we can attract it, either through the DOE or other programs. And so what we're watching is very specific grants and programs around these pain points that all three of these companies are really addressing. So in very good position to get a lot of money that doesn't dilute your capital table. So Troy, up to you. Where do you want to be? Tell us where you're going to be in a year.
Yeah, so today I spend about half my time fundraising. So a year from now, I'm hoping to spend, you know, less than 5% of my time fundraising and more focused on the strategic partnerships with utilities and users that want to connect to our network. So on the IRA, so we submitted earlier this week a $2.5 billion loan application with the Department of Energy Loan Program Office. So fingers crossed that we'll have that in hand a year from now as well. But a year from now, I hope to have at least 100 kilometers of tunnels or trenches done, completed, that we own and operate. We have basically two products. We're not going to sell our plasma machines to anybody. Our products are Boom and Badass. So Boom is build, own, operate, and maintain. So we're going to own a lot of our tunnels and trenches and collect a toll on all the commodities flowing through, right? Power, data, water, e-commerce delivery tubes with like Pipe Dream Labs and others. So yeah, with 100 kilometers, one of our first projects is from the Bay Area to San Francisco, all underground. And so I hope to have 100 kilometers of that done by then and start partnering with a lot of other great companies that potentially need to utilize our network.
Thank you so much for that, Troy. Jack?
Oh, Badass. Sorry, I left that hanging, didn't I? Boring and drilling as a simple service.
Nice.
So we get paid per foot or per meter. So.
Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, a year from now, fundraising, I hope not. No offense to the community, but we're entering Europe in 24. By 12 months from now, we want more than half of our fleets to be native to the vehicle, not aftermarket hardware dependent. And scaling down to much lighter vehicles. Today, it's predominantly, you know, commercial trucks.
Cool.
Okay, so we have about 5.5 minutes left. Let's open it up to the crowd here. You guys are probably have a lot of thoughts going on, so I'm going to open it up to you all. I don't know if we have a microphone or if you. Oh, there they are. They're on either side here. Okay, so do we have any questions of our panelists? You guys should take advantage. Got some very smart people here. Go ahead.
I got a question. This one might be more for Troy. Have you explored or are you working on using your technology to support decel?
Yeah, totally. So we want to have the big three in all of our projects: power, water, and fiber. And yeah, we think that having our network from basically San Diego to San Francisco will go up to the Pacific Northwest, so we'll have some water there, but then we're going to be going east all the way to Texas. And so if we could send some, some water to desal plants where the land is cheaper, and then send the clean water back, that's definitely part of our plan. I'd love to actually be able to replenish the Salton Sea by pumping some water from the Pacific into the Salton Sea and solve that problem and provide additional water for desal out there.
Yes, go ahead.
What's the difference between the boring company and yours? Are they using completely different technology?
They're using the conventional tunnel boring machine, which is a slowly rotating disc. You change out the cutter heads. Most of those machines cannot get through hard rock. And the boring company's made some really clever enhancements to it, so it's more efficient, but they aspire to be as fast as a snail someday. And we are already 80 times faster than a snail, and our cost is much lower because there's really, our only OpEx is the, it's labor, but electricity. Our inputs are electricity and air. No, it's non-contact. We're using energy. 7,000 degrees is the temperature of the plasma torches.
So Troy, on that topic, what does it cost?
Yeah, so PG&E today is spending for trenching, not tunneling, and we can do both. They're spending $3 to $5 million per kilometer, and that's just the average cost. We can do it for about $300,000 to $500,000, so we're one order of magnitude cheaper. We'll charge them $2 million per kilometer most likely, but that's our cost.
So what's the lobbying or regulatory process for getting permissions to do the drilling?
Yeah, and I don't want to monopolize all the questions here, but real quick, so that's why 3 years ago on our advisory board we have Rochelle Chong, she's a former California Public Utility Commissioner and FCC Commissioner at the federal, and then Kurt A. Bear, former chairman of FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And we came up with a strategy to become registered as a utility in 28 states. So that means no one can say no. We get guaranteed access to the rights of way, just like AT&T, Crown Castle, American Tower have been doing for decades. We still have to do, meet local codes and all that kind of thing, but it basically gives us a near guaranteed access. Shaves the time from 10 to 20 years down to 1 to 2 years.
Jack, I was wondering, it sounds like you built a platform that you were then able to sort of convince the OEMs to abandon their in-house platform. Can you talk a little bit about how you navigated that from them probably seeing you at first as a competitor to maybe then including them as strategic and non-competes and things like that? How do you navigate all that?
It takes time. I had a little bit of background that helped. 15 years ago, I was at Fox when we built Hulu. And we had the same kind of problem, like how to get an industry to change itself at the same time. It was really the same process. You kind of start with your conceptual idea of a perfect outcome and how it would help them if everybody did it. And then it's, it's a mission, right? You're constantly circulating the same story and you never change from it. And they steal little bits of it, right? And they fail, and then they come back again, and it's 2, 3, 4 times, and eventually somebody tips, and then everybody else tips because they've all lost a bunch of money by then, and somebody's validated it. But it's a long process, and the trick is just get your story straight first and don't change it. And make sure you have a way to live without it, right? In our case, we had a good business, just as an aftermarket business. Oh, the last thing. We actually had our customers finally say, if you're not going to do this, ship their aftermarket stuff to the factory and you put it in. And then they're like, okay. And by then, they already had the business concept, so it wasn't a start from scratch at that point. When there was a reason that they had no choice, they were ready for it.
Interesting. Yes, go ahead.
Heather, I just heard congratulations on the implementation. It seems like this is a quality Octopus in the UK was able to eliminate the need over the past year to start up 2 coal-fired power plants to meet like a 2 gigawatt efficiency that they have in days. They sent out the message, they got all the EVs to accept and it's basically something that so that is, I think kind of a crescendo that is successful pulled off. So how do you view that opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the demand response capabilities and then eventually vehicle to home and vehicle to grid capabilities of EV charging infrastructure is massive. Like, it cannot be understated. But the challenge is getting people in EVs and getting them chargers is kind of phase one. And what we want to do is make sure that's happening simultaneously, that we are deploying smart chargers, helping to increase EV adoption, and have those assets be really useful for the electric grid. I think one stat I heard recently was it's about $6,000 per EV in costs that the utility incurs in transmission and distribution costs. And that's really expecting to need to upgrade the distribution system predominantly in cities. That means a lot of transformers that need to be installed. And those materials are difficult. We didn't talk too much about supply chain, but just actually building the transformers that need to be deployed over the next 10 years is a serious supply constraint. So utilities are starting to think, okay, EVs are coming whether we like it or not. Consumer demand is here. The OEMs are fully committed. How are we going to deal with these power requirements? Not so much the energy requirements, but the actual power requirements. And in order to do so, we have to have managed charging and charging at the right times that are optimal for the grid, and maybe even locally at the feeder level. So where I see our technology is not doing all of it. We don't have to build out all of the grid aggregation platforms. We don't have to do all of those demand-side management services, but we have a platform with interoperable hardware and then software and API as a service, which is where we're going, where we have entities like aggregators that can build on top of our platform. And they will be the ones with contracts with the utilities, even wholesale energy markets, and they're able to leverage our software and hardware technology to manage demand response services and then even ancillary services like frequency regulation.
And just to leave everybody with kind of a fact in terms of our climate change transition, for most states and most cities in the areas that I work in, we're going to need 30% more power generated to electrify all of these vehicles, trucks, et cetera. And that's on top of transitioning all these fossil fuel plants that are currently providing most of the peak loads and most of the baseline loads. So not only do you have to replace all of that, but then you're going to need another 30%. So the challenge is there, and I'm so pleased and proud to have met all three of you. I'm so excited for your journeys, and I think hopefully everybody here will send them some good positive energy to realize our goals. I know we had a couple more questions. Please reach out to these folks. I'm sure you'll stick around for a little while and be happy to talk. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Neil. Thanks, Neil.
All right. How about a hand for our first panel? Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it. Hey, thank you.